Good morning to my friends and family, and welcome to this episode of my YouTube channel named Jim's 5am Club. It's 5:45 on this Wednesday morning, and as you can see, it's overcast. It's going to be a wet old day. It's been a long old wet summer, and it looks like autumn's going to be not all that much different. But the good news is that the gardens aren't complaining, the dams are filling, and the rain is shared across most of New South Wales and across Australia. So there are some benefits, and of course there are some issues and challenges that people face, especially those who have been caught up in the floods. But I've lived long enough to know that Australia, this sunburnt country, is a land of drought, accentuated by flood, then drought, flood, drought, flood, drought. Get my point. Always has been and always will be. Australia is an arid country, but when it rains, it pours. And I guess that's God's plan. That's how we were designed, and we just need to learn to live with it. The other thing I want to say is that I've been on this journey of growth and development through this platform named Jim's 5am Club, and it's been quite powerful, quite interesting. And for those who have listened to some of the vlogs, I encourage you to keep on listening, to be part of the family, to be part of this movement, because if you stick with me, I guarantee, I promise you one thing, that you will learn more about the things that matter most than what you'll learn from all the other people that you have on social media. Because what I do every day is I gather and I publish OPE, other people's experiences, in the form of books, book summaries. And what we do is basically go through the books or the book summary and identify 2 or 3 key points, 2 or 3 key learnings, and talk about them. So what we're doing is we're complementing and supplementing our own knowledge, the things that we already know, with things that other people know. The bottom line is, as we said time and time again, is that we all get to live slithers of reality, and we have a different past, a different present. I'm here, you are there, and we're going to most certainly experience a different future. So being able to complement and supplement those slithers of reality is going to help us grow and develop, and to hopefully be better people, or at least be positioned in a better place to be able to deal with the challenges, the many challenges that we're all going to face in our daily grind. So without any further ado, I'd like to introduce today's book summary, which I've just gone through and read on the bus on the way in. It takes me about half an hour to get to the city, but in that half an hour I'm able to read a book summary and take some notes that will prepare me for my vlog for today. So the book that I've chosen for today is entitled The Coddling of the American Mind, by dual authorship of Greg Lukianoff and Jonathan Haidt. So an interesting book which examines and has a look at what's going on in the world and how the world is a very, very different place today to what it may have been 1 or 2 generations ago, back in the day when we were born and we were growing up, or our grandparents and uncles and aunts were experiencing the world. So the author kicks off with an example of how things have changed, and that those changes are not necessarily all that empowering and effective, and may lead to issues and challenges for the people who grow up within this new style of world. So the author talks about the no peanut rule. The no peanut rule and the push for sterilisation and extreme hygiene with bringing up children. And what the author here is saying is that back in the 80s and 90s, there appeared to be a surge of allergies, peanut allergies, that caused children potential harm. But what happened was that once they looked into the medical causes and what generated this surge of allergy, what they found was that this allergy was actually caused by parents in the first place. Up until the 80s, peanut allergies and seafood allergies and all of these other allergies were quite rare, very rare indeed. But they seem to spike and to generate an alarming amount. And this spike was caused through overprotecting our children. And they found that in terms of percentages, children who had been protected from nuts, who had been overprotected during their growth and development, 17% of them, or around about 20%, just to keep the numbers easy to remember, formed peanut allergies. But of the children whose parents exposed them to varieties of foods and a variety of experiences, and didn't limit them, didn't keep them protected and separated from the various foods, then only 3% of them had an allergy or an allergic reaction to particular foods. So what we're saying is that the peanut allergy, was caused by being overcautious, by being overprotective of one's children. And then we're invited to consider the following medical sort of evidence, where we are informed that our immune systems are very complex things, but they're also very adaptive and resilient systems. And they are dynamic, and they can't be overridden or outsmarted by people who think they know better. So the call to action from this book is to basically expose your children, expose our little ones to a variety of foods as early as possible in their lives, so that they can build their own immunity, they can build their strength, and to be able to deal with these things. Because what science tells us is that if you're gradually exposed to a range of foods and experiences, it's not just foods, but it's also experiences, then your body learns the appropriate response. It will learn the appropriate immune response, or it will learn the appropriate social response. But we only become good at things by being exposed to them, by experiencing things and learning to deal with them. Of course, there will be children, there will be people who have issues and don't have an appropriate response. But we shouldn't penalise the majority of children. We shouldn't penalise families and people by trying to protect a very, very small minority and bringing and causing, I guess, developmental issues to the greater majority. So something to consider, something to think about. And the author goes on to say that excessive hygiene and lack of outdoor involvement led and will continue to lead to a number of these issues faced by our children and, of course, our children's children. So we need to get back to basics, we need to get down and dirty, and we need to allow children to grow and develop and to build their appropriate responses to the stimuli that the world will continue to generate and to push their way. Because what happens is the body overreacts to substances that are not really a threat, but it overreacts because it doesn't recognise what those substances, what those stimuli do, and it goes into the reptilian fight, flight, or freeze response. So as long as we are aware and we understand that what happens to our bodies could be because of what we don't do rather than what we do. So the key lesson here is gradual exposure, gradual and consistent exposure to foods, experiences, and all of these other things to allow our bodies to learn appropriate responses. And we'll make mistakes, we'll get injured, we'll get hurt, but all of that is part of the plan. You know, the body is a system and it's an adaptive learning system. Our immune system is an adaptive and learning system, but it will only learn once it is exposed and it gets to experience certain things. So the key lesson here is, you know, have a go, have a crack. Allow your children to experience what the world has to offer so that they too can have an inventory of hacks, life hacks and skills to be able to deal with these things. Because humans need stressors. We need to be insulted. We need to be assaulted. We need to fail. We need to go through pain in order to grow and develop. Just like muscles do, just like our brain does. You know, muscles need to be damaged in order to grow. The brain has plasticity and can shape itself and can reshape itself. So it's important to understand all of these things. So the author then goes on to talk about a few things, a few untruths that, so basically mythbusters. So the first untruth that he talks about is the untruth of fragility. We grow up thinking that what doesn't kill you will make you weaker. So to protect yourself against things that may harm you. But the opposite is true. We only get stronger when we resist against something or when we're forced to learn and adapt to something. You know, we can survive the black swans in our lives. You know, we are very resilient. Human beings are very resilient. You know, as a martial arts instructor and a martial arts referee, national referee, I learnt that you just can't tell how tough people are until they are forced to prove themselves. And we will figure it out. Everybody will figure it out, because everything at the end of the day is figure-outable. And as humans, we have the intelligence, we have the capability of working things out. And the other point that the author makes, and this is a really profound point, is that as parents, as guardians, as people within a community, we don't need to protect, or overprotect, I should say, our children. We need to prepare our children for the road, and not to spend all our time trying to prepare the road for the children. It's a big difference there. We need to prepare our children for what life has to thrust their way, rather than to negate, to neutralise, to make bland life. Because at that rate, what we'll do is we'll make a life which is basically not worth living for our children. There needs to be obstacles, there need to be challenges, so that our children feel fulfilled by getting things done, getting over, under, through those hurdles, those obstacles. Because all of those obstacles at the end of the day, as we say, are a part of the plan, a part of the props that life have to give us. So we need to embrace them, to welcome them, and to use them to leverage our growth and development, rather than hide, escape, and evade them at all costs. So prepare the child for the road, rather than preparing the road for the child. The second untruth that the author talks about is the untruth of emotional reasoning, the untruth of trusting your feelings. Because what happens is, and this is where the author talks about the offence that people take to certain things. Because what happens is that the author says is that our feelings sometimes are not a true reflection of what reality is. Starting to rain now, so let me just find a dry spot over here. So the potential of offence taking is almost unlimited. We've got to acknowledge that. And if you try and live a life without offending anybody, you're basically not going to be doing anything. You're going to be totally cancelled. And by worrying about other people's taking offence is going to lead to great unproductiveness. You're going to basically be a eunuch, a person who has no purpose, no ability to achieve anything. So the sad thing for each and every one of us is that there's been a huge shift in the world from intent to impact, which fosters a culture of victimisation. Because what people don't understand is, or what people fail to understand, is that it's the intent of what somebody does and says that should be offensive, rather than the impact of what somebody has said and done. Because you can't protect everybody. You can't tailor your message. You can't tailor your interaction and the way you connect to people and things based on how they're going to receive it. It's all about intent. So if your intent is positive, if your intent is productive, and somebody chooses to get offended based on what you say and do, then I guess to a certain extent that you don't have a responsibility or an accountability to worry about that, to apologise, to say you're sorry, because you have no control over how people receive what you say and do. all you can do from a moral perspective is to say and do it with the right intent. And if you know that what you've said and done, it has the right intention, then you basically don't have to worry about what other people feel, because they can suit themselves is the bottom line. If they want to get offended, then stuff them. If you didn't do it with an intention, a knowing intention to inflame them, to do it like that, then sorry, because you can't control how other people feel, then you shouldn't feel bad about how they feel as well. And the last untruth that the author talks about is the untruth of us versus them. The constant battle between good and evil, between the worker and the entrepreneur. Life isn't that simple. We aren't involved in a constant struggle with us versus them, because if you think that way, what it does is it generates and fosters a culture of blame, a victimhood, and you don't want to be caught up in that sort of culture, because what happens is that you get caught up, you get sucked into the vortex where the narrative is constantly about who to blame, who's at fault, and that is not productive, and it's not a good way to live, to basically spend your life looking for people to blame. And the author talks about here, makes a really valid point, that morality binds and blinds. That's really powerful. And what happens is that when you get people to bind together, they get blinded. And you see this with identity politics, where people come together to form a common enemy, and you get disparate groups coming together to challenge and to attack a common enemy who is not their enemy at the end of the day, but they just need to have a common enemy in order to achieve and to seek a purpose. So bringing groups together and cancelling others, fostering and generating this thing called a cancel culture, a call-out culture, is really ugly. And we see it in politics, and we see it a lot on social media. This call-out cancel culture actually stinks. So what the author here is finishing off by saying is, he says we need to be careful not to feed, not to fertilise, not to water, and not to idolise the culture of safetyism and the vindictive protectionist, because these things bring out the worst in us and bring out the worst of us. So there you go, another brilliant book summary presented on my platform, Jim's 5am Club, which is on YouTube. It's a YouTube channel. I've got 103 followers, so please, if you can, pass the word around, spread the word, invite others to listen, to learn, to be part of this YouTube channel, to be part of this vicarious presentation that I do every day, where you too can be part of this highlight and showcasing of the beauty of Sydney, where we are also able to overlay this beautiful image with a powerful, empowering message of OPE, where we take other people's slithers of reality, other people's experiences, and we use them as stepping stones for our own growth and development, where we can learn something new, where we can incorporate something new into our lives and see how we can leverage it, how we can use it to make improvements to not only our lives, but to other people's lives as well. Because, at the end of the day, we are working. We are part of a system, we are part of a community, we're part of a family, and we all need each other. We're different for each other, and we need to embrace all the learnings, all the experiences that are happening in our lives to help us grow the aspects, the various elements of our being. So thank you once again for joining me, where we talked about the coddling of the American mind, and we learnt a few truths. Or what we actually did is we exposed a few untruths to help us, to release us from the shackles of our own fears, uncertainty and doubts. Fears, uncertainty and doubts that are basically generated and perpetrated through the narrative of this modern society that we live in. This narrative, this cancel culture of trying to celebrate victimhood and to put one up against another. The civil war of modern time, without weapons, but with the ugly weapon of the tongue and the ugly weapon of isolating people, calling them out and making them feel unworthy. So take care. I'll head off to work. It won't be a very productive day by the looks of it, because this rain is going to set in and we're going to have a couple of days of wet, and hopefully it'll dry up by the weekend. So take care. Yasas. Bye for now. And just let's live, learn and pass it on and enjoy whatever today has to offer us and whatever unfolds into our lives, and to use it and to make sure that we use it in a way that serves us. Take care and happy Wednesday. Bye for now.